Hey, what's up guys? With Attack on Titan Season 4 coming out soon, I thought I would make a video reviewing the Attack on Titan manga, or more specifically, Before the Fall manga, since the current Attack on Titan manga is still pretty much ongoing. Before the Fall is set, I think, 100 years before the current Attack on Titan manga and focuses a lot more on the development of a vertical maneuvering gear, which is basically the stuff they use in the Attack on Titan universe to just swing about and go behind the Titans and slice them in the neck. And also, Before the Fall focuses a lot on the rise of the Survey Corps and politics within the Attack on Titan universe. Basically, at this point in time, the Survey Corps is being threatened to shut down by the most conservative elements in the government, and along with corruption within the military police force. Pretty much because they don't get anywhere, because it's all a waste of money, the Survey Corps, as in this much amount of time, they've only managed to kill one Titan, and most of the research they gathered is basically viewed as pretty pointless. The main characters in the manga are basically Charlotte and Kuklo, who are the romantic duo that really are not that interesting of a duo. I don't really think the chemistry is there between the two characters. They are kind of interesting more as individuals. Kuklo is kept in a mansion in basically a prison center where he meets up with Charlotte, who comes in there originally to kill him. However, she views him as a human because she's actually got brains in the manga. And they end up working together and eventually leaving the mansion in the most unfortunate circumstances, because Xavier's entire family is murdered by some cultists. And as soon as they get out, they work on developing the vertical gear, as they basically want to eliminate all the Titans. And they meet up with people such as Angel Altonen, the first person to kill a Titan, and he also helps create the vertical gear with Charlotte and Xenophon. And Kuko ends up going on an expedition at the very end of a manga to kill a Titan. Literally, the start of a manga is Kuko's mum giving birth to him as she's thrown up by a Titan, which doesn't really make sense because she's thrown up and she somehow survives the fall, whilst also giving birth to a little baby, and the Titan's thrown up for some reason. The entire crowd sees this, obviously very horrified, and they view Kuko that's coming out as the son of a Titan. So what happens is they end up selling him off to some rich family because they're all frightened of him because he's a baby Titan. And he's basically beaten up every day in this mansion by this spoiled rich kid called Xavier. And Kuklo would basically end up being sort of okay with it, which is kind of weird for his character, whereas Xavier fucking despises Kuklo for this because he never really cares about it. And that's basically the whole point of their rivalry, is Xavier is traumatized because Kuklo, whilst he's being beaten up as a child, is never really bothered by it. And so to review the manga is very interesting for looking into the Attack on Titan lore, as it explores a lot about the society and politics again. And in Attack on Titan, it explores elements such as what you'd never get in the main story, such as the underground society, which is basically an underground black market made up of the worst criminals hiding from the law. And it's interesting to look at these characters as they have to survive in pretty much an area with no sunshine or no law enforcement. And basically it's kind of horrifying to look at that world, because Charlotte is forced to act as a boy, because what basically she knows is that if they ever find out she was a girl, they would sort of I cannot say it here, but I'm pretty sure you can imagine. The manga also feels a lot more historical than fantasy based, as in Attack on Titan, because it includes less fighting with the Titans and more fighting in between the walls, about getting to the point where they're gonna start to kill off the Titans. The art style in Before the Wall is decent to look at, and I really like the covers. However, in my opinion, it is overshadowed by the much better art style of the current Attack on Titan manga. However, this may seem like an unfair comparison because the current Attack on Titan has been going over for over 100 chapters now, so it's had a lot of time to develop its art style and a lot more time to improve. However, it's just sort of weird going from the current Attack on Titan manga to reading Before the Fall and sort of seeing not the drop in quality. However, it's just not to that point. The most interesting character in Before the Wall is Rosa Karlstead, who ends up getting the most character development as an authentic character. She struggles in the Survey Corps because she's basically a woman and nobody really views that as viable. However, in the Survey Corps, being a woman is actually more of an advantage because it requires a lot more agility than strength. Basically, also her being a woman makes her feeling left out with her friend group, as they end up having pretending to have discussions about women, and it basically leads her to being very upset because it's like it's dehumanizing to her as a character. At the very start, when we see Rosa Karlstedt, she is basically she's not that good. She's basically kind of crap in there, and which leads to more doubt about herself. However, basically through the guidance of Kukla and Charlie, she overcomes this, becoming the leader of the Survey Corps. Now going back to the main characters of Before the Fall, Charlotte and Kukla, they do feel a little overpowered, as Kukla is basically made to get out of ridiculous situations. Charlotte is also, when everyone's around Charlotte, she's just constantly flattered by everyone around her comrades, even though sometimes she'll be a complete dipshit. But basically they'll just be like, oh no Charlotte, it's not your fault, you can be expected to handle that, which yeah, may be rational, but I wanna see this world, which is basically less developed than the current Attack on Titan, being a lot more dickish towards a woman like Charlotte, a blonde upper class girl. You know, it doesn't really make sense that everyone's just sort of cool with it. And at the start I would say Kuklo is an interesting character because he struggles with himself, because he believes he is actually legitimately a Titan, like the son of a Titan. However, once he goes outside the walls and sees his first Titan, he seems to get over this, and he gets over this way too quickly, in my opinion. I think there should have been a lot more development into looking into himself as struggling, viewing himself as a Titan, because that's basically how he's brought up his entire childhood, being traumatized, being called a dirty Titan, which is the worst of humanity. And yet, whereas he ends up just getting over it as soon as he sees the Titan, he's like, oh yeah, I guess I'm human then. And then after that, I think there's a lot less to his character. And moreover, to my point with the character Kuklo being overpowered, by the end of the story, because they basically know that Kuklo is so overpowered, he's literally banned from killing a Titan, because they know if he was to kill a Titan, they would either have to nerf him to make it interesting, or they just sort of use this plot point, well, if they see us killing a Titan, then it's pretty much non-viable, because we need someone other than Kuklo to kill a Titan, because everyone knows how broken you are, Kuklo. Although Kuklo is broken, he does end up losing to Xavier, who proves to be like the only man capable of even touching Kuklo, because he's that OP. To be fair to Xavier, he is more interesting, as his motives are never really clear in the story, except him wanting to protect his sister, which is sort of a noble cause, even if he goes about it definitely the wrong way. It's very interesting to see how he develops as a character, growing to basically trust in people. And at some point, he is not totally broken, because he's almost beaten by someone. However, he is saved by his sort of ridiculous-looking butler, who reminds me of his villain from Soul Eater. I think what the manga does fairly well is represent factions, outside of the Survey Corps, of course, because they are clearly the good guys. But there's factions in the point of the story where these communist rebels take over this industrial city. Yeah, sort of reminds me of Soviet Russia, but anyway, they're made to sort of be sympathetic, as they're basically a bunch of hunters who have been driven off their hunting grounds from the government, but they're ultimately naive, as we learn that their leader is an egotistical nutcase, and most of the rebels are actually kind of incompetent in fighting the royal police force. And even though you can sort of sympathize with them, you don't want to side with them at all, because there's bigger priorities on hand, such as killing the Titans. Speaking of Titans, the best part of this manga is definitely when they're fighting the Titans. Very similar to the original Attack on Titan, the fights between the Titans, the people in the Titans, are very sort of thrilling. And at the very end of this manga is awesome to basically view the battle between a Kuklo Xavier and the 10-foot Titan. However, despite that bit being very awesome about the end of the manga, I am definitely a little disappointed, because everything appears to go too well. Even though this is the first time the group goes out and has to fight in these tough, heavy rain conditions that they constantly talk about, none of the main characters even die. Some characters do die, but they're sort of the off characters that nobody even cares about. And that is definitely disappointing, since I expected it to be like the original Attack on Titan ending, where basically most of the main cast is supposed to be slaughtered. I thought that would make a lot of sense for this, as it's a prequel, and killing of most of the characters, such as like in Rogue One, is fitting. And then knowing the power of the Titans, and it being one of the early expeditions, it would have been better to kill off some of Rose's comrades than it just being one of them breaks his ankle, and then there would be more loss to it. And I feel like it should have been a lot similar to the brutality we see with the female Titan in the actual Attack on Titan manga. Anyway, that's it from me, guys. If you have read or watched Attack on Titan, you should definitely leave a comment and I'll read it. I'll talk about it, open to discussion here. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.